Okay, so that's kind of what I wanted to get into next is just for like a last sort of question, thought, food for thought sort of thing. I just started reading that book by Bobby Peters. It breaks down the Packers offense in 2020. Now, granted, I don't know how much the Chargers are going to use of the Packers offense, but kind of working with the LaFleur offense isn't the worst thing in the world. And one of the things the Packers did better than anybody, according to the author at least, is run mesh, where you're having those two shallow crossing routes intersecting like 3 yards off the ball. And, now they run more variations than anybody else, apparently. But one of the ones they did use was they typically had the tight end, running one of those crossers and hitting them. And so, to me, it only triggered something for me because I swear in these practice videos, I am watching, Mike Williams, Donald Parham, these guys run tons of shallow crossers over and over and getting those yards after the catch. And so I'm trying to figure out who, like, you think it's Jared, like Jared Cook could do it. I don't know. Like, is there a guy that's great, like yards after the catch in terms of like a crosser and then back up field there? Is there a guy that can beat man coverage like that on this team in the tight end group? Like, I don't really know. Is it McKitty? Is he more athletic? It's
Anderson, man.
It's Anderson.
Anderson is the best after the catch guy on the tight end group, in my opinion.
Right. So, I mean, if they decide to go that way, that's obviously, great for him to make the roster. We didn't think he'd make the roster, but he is like that. That is his thing. So again, I don't know how much the Chargers are going to run anything the Packers are doing. Obviously, they have their center. So, some things could help there, I guess. But, just food for thought. I just saw that. And then watching the practice videos, I swear I'm watching them run a bunch of shallow crossers. So I'm just curious who that guy would be. Maybe it's Anderson.
Yeah, I think the Anderson thing is actually more interesting. I don't think it's a lock that he doesn't make the roster. I think it's a kind of open question, depending on who they would keep. I mean, they're going to keep McKitty. They're going to keep Cook. That's, I think we're pretty sure on Neighbors. And then that kind of makes it a Cook versus Parham thing, I guess, a little bit. Or sorry, not Cook versus Parham. Anderson versus Parham, in the sense of, if you want that guy that can stretch the field, or do you want that guy who's going to be more your blocker, lob it up to him guy, like we saw with Parham last year. So I guess that's kind of the competition. But again, if they wanted, they did keep 5 tight ends last year, including Gabe Neighbors at fullback. So maybe they do that again. Like I just said, I just don't love the depth on this team to the point where I want to keep that many, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I'd rather have one more edge player, one more safety, one more corner, whatever it is, than have, I guess both Anderson and Parham. So I guess that's the question, is which way does the coaching staff lean? Because it felt like last year's coaching staff leaned pretty heavily towards Parham once he started catching fire. But I don't know kind of what this coaching staff will be in regards to that. Like Tyler brings out, they may want to run more of those mesh routes and more of those kind of stretched field plays, which Anderson, did excel in those last 2 games last year. However, the rest of the season, he had 6 yards. So, it's a tough situation. So I don't think it's a lock by any means that Anderson doesn't make the team, but that might be an interesting kind of preseason battle that nobody's talking about. I don't know.
Well, I just think, obviously, Jared Cook is not the long-term solution for the Chargers, but I think him and Donald Parham are kind of similar in terms of skill set. And maybe that could lend itself to maybe looking at Donald Parham as being a little redundant. I happen to think that, Parham probably has the best chance of the other 3 of being like a future tight end 1. So I don't know. That's going to be an interesting conversation, because I do think it is a debate that this team will be having, because the issue with Steven Anderson is that he was so bad on special teams. Mm-hmm. But if you're using Neighbors and McKitty on special teams, then Anderson doesn't have to do that. And so if you're wanting like different kinds of tight ends, right? Like Cook, Anderson, and McKitty would be 3 very different tight ends. You can do different things with all 3 of them. I think Parham and Cook probably is a little redundant. If you're wanting more options, then that's something to consider. But it's such a tricky thing to balance, right? Because, like I said, you're hoping that Parham can kind of be your future tight end 1, whereas Cook is only for 1 year. And you just signed Jared Cook. Like, you're not going to cut Jared Cook before you even see what you have. And maybe you're looking at Donald Parham and Steven Anderson, and kind of the same thing. Like, we can't really cut them. Like, we want to see what we have in them. So maybe they do keep all 5 guys, including Game Neighbors. I don't know. That's going to be something that they'll have to figure out in training camp.